The biggest question Brian Michael Bendis has yet to answer is why should I care about Leviathan? Nothing about this story, the characters, nothing about anything feels important here. Brian Michael Bendis' first event book at DC Comics Event Leviathan is off to an ominous start. Thus far, few happenings, if any, presented in the first two issues weren't included in the lead-up in Action Comics, Superman Leviathan Rising Special, or Year the Villain Special. Bendis' long history of difficulties with pacing, generic dialogue, and ignoring continuity are very evident once again in this story. Sales for the event series are extremely soft for a story launched in the pages of Action Comics led by Batman and spearheaded by one of DC Comics' premier writers. Or at least that's the way DC brass Dan Didio, Jim Lee, and Bob Harras seem to view Brian Michael Bendis. DC Comics customers, who trust me have the ultimate say, haven't warmed up to Bendis since his arrival. 74,000 copies shipped of issue 1 and 53,000 comics moved for issue 2 are honestly a terrible indictment on Bendis' standing with DC's audience. I can't think of another quote-unquote A-list creator in the industry colder than Brian Michael Bendis right now. Event Leviathan's cast of street-level characters including Batman, Manhunter, The Question, and Green Arrow are supposed to highlight his strengths as a writer. At this point, that just isn't the case. And I think most will agree it only gets worse in Event Leviathan number 3. After reading this issue, I'm waving the white flag. I give up. I have no hope that this story can be salvaged. Up to this issue, longtime collaborator Alex Maleev's art has been a saving grace of sorts for the book. The art hasn't been great, but it hasn't been terrible either. Boy, does he drop the ball significantly this week. Needless to say, I don't recommend reading this or any of the Event Leviathan issues. I hope you're ready for my Event Leviathan number 3 comic book review. Let's dive right into what makes Alex Maleev's performance in this comic book so bad. The first two issues featured little action of note. I predicted his highly stylized, muddy illustrations aren't the right approach to a superhero story, and boy was I right. This double-page, 18-panel action sequence is the most incomprehensible series of graphics I've encountered in a very long time. Jason Todd squares off with Batman's team of detectives, and I don't even know. The one thing I can make out clearly is Lois Lane is recording the encounter on her phone. Nothing else makes much sense. During the middle sequence of panels, it appears that Green Arrow is exiting Plastic Man's chest into Jason Todd. During the bottom series of graphics, it's not clear who or what exactly Damian is shouting no at. There is no sense of continuity in what's supposed to be a showcase action set. And this continues on during the rest of the action scenes in the book. The jumps are extremely jarring, and worst of all, downright confusing. I think they were going for a Paul Greengrass-like shaky cam vibe here, but it fails on every level. And probably a couple of levels I don't even know exist. One of the few positives in this comic is Superman finally arrives in his own event book. Why Bendis and Maleev waited so long to return the Man of Steel to the pages of a book launched out of Action Comics is far beyond me. I will admit Maleev depicts Superman much better and more heroic than expected. I'll even go as far to say his Superman looks better than Greg Capullo's from Batman Last Night on Earth number 2. Another artist whose style doesn't work for such a virtuous character in my opinion. This is the only glimpse we get of the iconic superhero in this particular comic. Based on just how terrible and incoherent the action sequences featuring non-powered characters are in this issue, I have no confidence the scenes involving Superman in action moving forward won't be even worse. But we won't know for certain until September's Event Leviathan number 4. Alex Maleev's art takes a huge step back this week due to all the action. His style is much better suited for pulp or noir comics. Superheroes just aren't his bag, baby, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. The visuals continue to be muddied and don't fit the scope of the story. His art is still fine when the characters are standing around and talking, but that's hardly a compliment. I rate the art in Event Leviathan number 3, 2 out of 5. Believe it or not, the art is still the strong point of the story this week. Brian Michael Bendis struggles to accomplish anything of note in this comic other than highlighting his own shortcomings as a writer. The story opens in the Fortress of Solitude. The Question looks at some artifacts while thinking. Or at least that's what I thought was happening. I realized once the line, "Whereas the Question" appeared, this is in fact a conversation happening off-panel. It's actually happening between several characters, but you never know that until you turn the page. All the dialogue is very generic, while trying to be clever with the use of the word question. The real problem here, like many Bendis stories, is that characters don't have distinct voices or personalities. These lines of dialogue could be coming from any character in the DC universe written by Bendis. Batman, Damian Wayne Robin, and Plastic Man had three of the most distinguished personalities in the entire industry. Bendis fails to capture any of what makes them individuals here. Why use any of these wonderful characters with years of development if they're just going to be superhero A, B, and C? And quite frankly, why are DC Comics editorial allowing anyone to misuse the Batman character? He's the most important IP in their entire catalog. You would think he would be protected from this kind of stale, milquetoast portrayal. When the book finally moves to the full team in the Fortress of Solitude, things really start breaking apart. In issue 1, Batman, Green Arrow, and Lois Lane state they need to stop Leviathan by dawn or all would be lost. How do they have time to go to the Bermuda Triangle from Seattle? Why would Lois Lane take a group with this many wildcards to Superman's secret location with clandestine technologies and other information he likely doesn't want out in public? Shouldn't the team be in the Batcave, a location specifically designed for detective work? This group of heroes being in this location makes no sense at all. The team are arguing back and forth, blaming Batman for allowing Jason Todd to escape. This doesn't jive with the action sequence that follows it, which I'm not really going to cover again because it sucks so bad. The team also claimed multiple times that Jason Todd defeated the entire group of heroes with ease. How in the hell can Jason Todd defeat a group of 6 superheroes led by Batman and Robin? This is terrible characterization all around and severely detracts from the overall story, which is already lacking. There is one good character moment in the book that stands out, but even it falls apart under scrutiny. After Red Hood defeats Manhunter to end his confrontation with DC's finest detectives, he encounters Lois Lane, who asks for an exclusive interview, which while actually in character is kinda ridiculous given the circumstances. Jason Todd stops evading to tell Lois he's been set up because he's the perfect fall guy. He never explains why or how he's being framed. He also possesses a fairly good amount of information, but it's never even hinted at, let alone explained, how he came to know it. But Red Hood is emphatic that Amanda Waller is the key to everything happening. If Bendis is going to create all these new questions, he should have provided a few answers. One decent character moment isn't near enough to make up for the abundance of generic and random dialogue and mischaracterizations. The fact that half of the book is characters standing around talking exacerbates Bendis' shortcomings. The characterization in this comic is really bad. I rate it 1 out of 5. Alright, let's run through a very shallow plot real quick and put a bow on this week's event Leviathan. The book starts with the team arguing over their failure at the Fortress of Solitude. They mention multiple times that Jason Todd beat them easily. There are multiple pages of incoherent action that I'm not going to show again because it sucks. Lois Lane eventually lets the team know Red Hood said Amanda Waller is the key to uncovering Leviathan, which I guess is the reason they need to be in the Fortress of Solitude to begin with, even though it makes no sense whatsoever. Lois tells Batman the last time she saw Waller was in fact in the Fortress of Solitude. The Dark Knight is immediately suspicious even after Lois explains Amanda showed up on their doorstep with a bullet wound before they took her to the fortress for safekeeping. Damian discovers the location of her planted recording device immediately. I must say I would expect Waller to have less conspicuous spy tech, and apparently her devices are invisible to Kryptonian sentinels. Don't believe that's possible, but whatever. The story then reveals Waller is monitoring the team while they're at the Fortress of Solitude. She destroys a receiver before exiting her rundown hotel somewhere in South America to hit the road. Leviathan arrives and Amanda says, "I know who you are." Leviathan's reply is easily the lamest dialogue in the entire book. Bluffy bluffer, no you don't. My 4-year-old could write a more menacing villain than this. Alright, there's actually another line that's almost as stupid from Waller herself. Your mask is algorithmically designed to create the perfect amount of fear and leadership confidence. You're a con artist! That might be worse. Needless to say, the comic ends on a very poorly executed cliffhanger as Superman finally arrives. Like I said before, the plot in this issue is very thin. The only thing that happens is Red Hood escapes and the team learn Waller is spying on them because they inexplicably went all the way to the Bermuda Triangle to conduct an investigation. Superman shows up, I guess, but it's too little, too late. Event Leviathan once again features far too many scenes of the team standing around talking. The plot sucks. I rate it 1.5 out of 5. There are so many things holding back Event Leviathan number 3. Alex Maleev's art is a terrible fit for superhero action. It's far too hard to follow. The visuals are muddied and don't fit the scope of the story. The dialogue is just terrible. It's very generic, and the verbal joust between Waller and Leviathan is really pitiful. Jason Todd shouldn't be beating a team of 6 heroes led by Batman. Ever. Bendis introduces far too many new questions while providing no answers of consequence. And to be perfectly honest, the biggest problem with this comic book is there is no impact with the reader. I rate Event Leviathan number 3 1.5 out of 5 overall. I don't recommend this comic to anyone. If you're still reading this story, you'll probably be happier giving it up. The biggest question Brian Michael Bendis has yet to answer is why should I care about Leviathan? Nothing about this story, the characters, nothing about anything feels important here. And that's on Bendis, Maleev, and DC Editorial. It's not the reader's responsibility to give a DC event book with Batman and Superman gravitas. So far, Bendis and everyone associated with Event Leviathan have failed beyond my wildest imaginations. And don't worry, Bendis continues growing his influence at DC Comics. Expect more third-rate event books in the future. The age of Bendis appears to be here to stay. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.